in the winter of 1959, 9 experienced hikers fled into the sub-zero darkness of the Ural Mountains, leaving behind the only thing that could keep them alive: their boots, their coats, and their tent. They weren't running toward safety. They were running away from something so terrifying. They chose to face a certain death by freezing rather than spend one more second inside their shelter. When search parties finally reached the slopes of Kolotsiakal, they found a scene that defied logic: a tent sliced open from the inside, and a trail of footprints in the snow that led toward a forest where nature and the inexplicable met in a violent, silent collision. The story begins with 10 young, fit, and highly trained students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. Led by the charismatic Igor Dyatlov, they were embarking on a Category 3 expedition, the highest level of difficulty recognized by Soviet authorities. Their destination was Mount Otorten, a journey across the frozen northern wilderness that required immense physical fortitude. But on January 28th, destiny intervened for one member of the group. Yuri Yudin, plagued by a sudden and debilitating flare-up of chronic joint pain, was forced to turn back. He said his goodbyes at the edge of the wilderness, watching his 9 friends disappear into the white expanse. He would be the only one to grow old. By February 1st, the group began their ascent of Kolotsiakal. In the language of the indigenous Mansi people, the name carries a grim warning: Dead Mountain. As the weather soured and visibility dropped near zero, the group drifted off course. Realizing they had strayed west, Dyatlov made a decision that historians and survival experts still debate today. Instead of descending a mile back down into the relative shelter of the forested valley, he ordered the group to pitch their large communal tent right there, on the exposed, wind-swept slope of the mountain. They settled in for the night, likely eating a cold meal and preparing for the next day's climb. Photographs recovered from their cameras show the group in high spirits, documented right up until the moments before the chaos began. Then, something happened. Something so sudden and so primal that there was no time to unfasten the tent's entrance. Someone took a knife and slashed through the heavy canvas from the inside. The 9 hikers spilled out into a night where temperatures hovered around 30 degrees below zero. They were catastrophically underdressed. Some were in only their undergarments. Others wore a single boot or just socks. They did not run. The footprints found weeks later showed they walked in an orderly fashion, descending the slope toward the tree line nearly a mile away. When they failed to send a telegram announcing their return on February 12th, the silence grew heavy. By the 26th, searchers finally located the tent. It was a ghost ship in the snow, half buried and silent, containing all their warm clothing, their survival gear, and their shoes. The following day, the first grim discoveries were made. Near a massive Siberian cedar at the forest's edge, Yuri Doroshenko and Georgy Krivonishenko lay under the tree, dressed only in their underwear. Their hands were charred and bloody, the skin worn away. They had desperately tried to climb the cedar, perhaps to see the tent or to escape something on the ground, and had attempted to maintain a small fire with their bare, freezing hands. Nearby, the bodies of Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin were found spaced out between the tree and the tent. Their positions suggested a desperate, final struggle to crawl back to the warmth of the shelter they had abandoned. They died face down in the snow, victims of hypothermia. But the mystery took a much darker turn months later, as the heavy winter snows began to melt. In May, the final 4 hikers were discovered buried in a ravine further into the forest. Unlike their comrades, these 4, Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolovatov, and Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, did not die simply from the cold. They were found with horrific internal injuries. Thibault-Brignoles' skull had been crushed. Zolotaryov and Dubinina had suffered massive chest trauma, their rib cages shattered. A medical examiner noted that the force required to cause such damage was equivalent to a high-speed car crash. Yet, In a detail that chilled the investigators to the bone, there was no corresponding soft tissue damage, no bruising, no cuts, no external signs of the blunt force that had pulverized their bones from within. Even more disturbing, Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her facial tissue. Semyon Zolotaryev's eyes were also gone. The Soviet authorities abruptly closed the case in May 1959. The official verdict was as enigmatic as the crime scene itself, attributing the deaths to an unknown, compelling force. The files were classified, the area was cordoned off, and the world was left to wonder. For decades, theories have swirled through the vacuum left by the official investigation. Some point to a slab avalanche, a delayed collapse of snow that struck the tent and forced the hikers out. This theory, bolstered by modern computer modeling, explains the chest injuries and the flight, but it fails to explain why the hikers walked away in an orderly line, or why the tent was still standing on its poles when searchers arrived. Others looked to the sky. During the nights following the tragedy, other hiking groups in the region reported seeing glowing orange spheres drifting over Kola Syakul. This has fueled speculation of secret Soviet weapons testing, perhaps a parachute mine or a fuel-air explosive that released a shockwave, crushing the hikers' ribs without marking their skin. This would also explain the traces of high radiation found on the clothing of the final 4 victims. There is even the theory of infrasound. Proponents suggest that the unique shape of the mountain and the howling wind could have created a Kármán vortex street, generating low-frequency sound waves inaudible to the ear, but capable of triggering intense physiological terror and nausea. In this scenario, the hikers didn't flee a physical threat, but a psychological one, a silent sound that drove them into a state of primal, suicidal panic. Was it a freak of nature, a botched military experiment, or something even more clandestine? We are left with the image of 9 young lives ended in the dark, caught between the indifference of the Siberian winter and a force that remains unnamed. The Dyatlov Pass remains a knot that no amount of logic can fully untie, a story where every answer only serves to sharpen the edge of the next question. On the slopes of the dead mountain, the truth is buried under 60 years of snow, and the only ones who know what happened that night took their secrets with them into the ice.